Hi, everybody. I'm Melinda Gallant, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Cape Conversations. That's right, it's Fuzzy Slippers edition again. I want to thank you all for joining me again today. We're going to be talking with somebody running for the Barnstable 5th. That's right, the Barnstable 5th, the seat that Randy Hunt held for so long and decided to not run again. So come along, let's have another Cape Conversations. Hi, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here today with a Sandwich resident who is running for Barnstable 5th, the Randy Hunt seat, State Senate, James Dever. James, how are you?
Well, I think all being said in these current conditions, I think we're doing okay over here. How about yourself?
We're hanging in. I heard somebody say that they heard it's going to be, the governor spoke this morning and said it would be until May 18th now. They've extended the date, which, come on, in our heart of hearts, we knew it was going to be extended. And they said they just broke out in tears. Well, I'm kind of beyond that, you know, unless you've had somebody pass away or something. Come on, buck up.
Yeah, I mean, this is the new normal that we're all going to have to get used to for a long time, it seems like.
So why are you running? What's the point?
The point of running, and it's funny, it's the same point I was running before COVID-19 hit. As a member of the school committee, every spring I attend a town meeting like everybody does in the surrounding towns of the Barnstable 5th. And it seems like we're always fighting amongst ourselves. Do we get a school teacher? Do we pave a road? Do we go for the fire truck? And just for too long, we've been kind of fighting amongst ourselves for these dollars and not getting our fair share from Beacon Hill. So the idea here is, for the first time in 20 years, let's send up a voice from the majority party at Beacon Hill. We give an awful lot of bang up there. Let's start getting more of our bucks back from the folks in Boston. And what's going on right now with COVID-19, it just makes it that much more important, because towns all across Massachusetts, the revenues are going to be down, tax receipts are going to be down. There's going to be a lot of struggle for the services that we need. And it's just, I think, imperative to have a voice in the majority party up on Beacon Hill, and somebody that has the skill set to bring home the goods that we need.
So, Jim, can I call you Jim?
Jim's fine.
Good.
Please.
Well, actually, I won't call you Jimmy. That's what Denise calls you. She said, tell Jimmy hi. Since your cousin is
with cousins and sisters.
It's all the same.
Correct.
So anyway, how long have you lived in Sandwich, and what do you do for a living? And just tell us about yourself.
Sure. My wife and I, Bethany, we have 10-year-old twins, Seamus and Brianna.
Wow.
They're in 4th grade in the Sandwich school system. Yeah, we moved down here in 2007. I, like probably a lot of people around here, used to summer on Cape Cod. And my parents eventually took their summer home that they got in the late 70s, along with my grandmother and my aunt, that it's now their summer home, and they turned it into a year-round home. So they've been down since '04, and part of the reason to move down was to kind of keep an eye on them as well, as that's the same for a lot of people my age that are dealing with both younger children and older adults. And it's really turned into just our home, if you will, because we got to Sandwich in 2008. We've been here for 12 years. And just, everything about Sandwich is something we were looking for. And now I think it's the time to kind of give back to Sandwich. And when you ask me what I do during the day, well, that's the perfect skill set, I think, for somebody up on Beacon Hill. I'm a labor attorney during the day.
Oh.
So in essence, what I've been doing for the last 20 years, I'm a labor attorney for NAGE, which is the National Association of Government Employees. I represent police officers, the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, and actually I've been the lawyer for the Sandwich Patrolmen for my 20 years at NAGE, or almost 20 years. And why I think this is going to be invaluable experience, because I've already dealt with a lot of these agencies. I've already dealing with various state agencies and been able to negotiate on behalf of the working families. And that is the exact same thing I'm going to be able to do as our state rep. Those workers who are out there right now for us on the front lines, be it the EMS, be it the police, be it the Stop and Shop, those are the people that I've been representing my entire professional career. And now it's time just to bring that to the next level and really work for them and all working families up at Beacon Hill.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what's it like having twins?
You know, it's excellent. It's really been a blast. Obviously, it's kind of crazy at first, getting your feet under you, but really watching them develop into their own individual personalities has been such a treat. And it's funny, I've been on the school committee for 6 years. The reason why I ran for school committee 6 years ago was I remember having a conversation with my son one day, and I asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. And Seamus said, happy. And I thought, well,
Whoa.
what a unique answer, to just simply want to be happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a unique answer. And that was, I thought our schools could play a role in making our children's happy, and more than just happy, but making sure they're full. And I think what we've seen during this whole COVID-19 situation is how important our public schools are, because it's really not just educating our kids. There's so much more that goes into what our public schools give to our students. And seeing Seamus and Brianna, seeing them develop from simply, I want to be happy 6 years ago, to now into having more of a direction. And not at this age, you really don't know what you want to do, but at least you have an idea of things that interest you and things that pique your interest. And that has been a huge compliment to the Sandwich Public School System. It was, it was interesting. My kids are the first kids that'll be going through the school since we reorganized the schools.
Uh-huh.
When I came on the school committee 6 years ago, the big decision was, well, the Wing School had already closed. So we had to decide as a town, which way would we go forward with our two remaining public schools? Would we have them both be separate neighborhood schools, K through 6, or make one school, the Forestdale, pre-K through 2, and then you make the Oak Ridge 3 through 6, and then you go on to STEM in the high school? Well, that was a really contentious time. And the vote came down 4-3 in favor of reorganizing our schools in the system they are now. And I just think it's been such a tremendous success. And it was funny when I think back to making that decision. And again, this is a decision we made when we were on the board. Well, maybe we were on the board maybe a month or so before myself and new members had to make this decision. But I remember relying on the guidance of other folks on the committee. There was Lois Wack, Andrea Killian. These are people, and they were part of my 4 vote, 4-3. And it's funny because you hear about all this talk about, politics, partisanship and whatnot. I've just never seen it that way. And especially on the school committee, it's funny because here I am now running to be the state representative for Sandwich in the Democratic Party. Yet at the beginning when I was on the school committee, the current chairs of the Republican Town Committee, Andrea and Lois, were my biggest allies. So it's just, I've always heard when people say, oh, you should get into the school committee or a lower level of politics to kind of put forward your party platform. I think that's the wrong reason. I've become really more aware of both sides of the issues by being able to open myself up to other people from a different point of view. And it worked successfully for our Sandwich schools because we, as I said, we reorganized 4-3. And it's the same idea I try to bring to my work every day as a labor attorney for working families. You have to listen to both sides and hopefully that way get the best result possible. And I think for our Sandwich Public Schools, we have got the best result possible.
Well, my kids went through Sandwich Public Schools a long time ago, long before all the changes, certainly. However,
Sure.
Out of that, I have a restaurant owner. My youngest is a restaurant owner. My middle daughter is a college professor in Boston, and my oldest he still is an entrepreneur, but owns a huge real estate business down in Rhode Island. So they all graduated from Sandwich High School. They all went out into the world. They got a great education. And they also got to, although I think sometimes Sandwich is pretty cloistered, they got a great general
Sure.
education, you know? And I think that's something I would like to ask you about. I've been interviewing a lot of people doing it. We call this the Fuzzy Slipper edition of the Fuzzy Slipper edition of Cape Conversations. So what I found, though, which was quite surprising to me, two things. There are more grandparents in Sandwich raising their grandchildren than you can even imagine. And second of all, there are many families, not many, quite a few families that are that have food issues. They can't put a meal on the table every day. And that to me was a surprise because, you know, this is Sandwich. We're beautiful. Everybody lives in a nice house or in a nice area. What do you mean they can't put food on the table? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, you know, and that's something we've known on the school committee for a long time, that the number of students who get a free and reduced lunch, you know, it's something that we've always had our eye on. And really, one of the biggest decisions that we had to consider in shutting down our schools was how exactly are we going to feed all these children and their families as well. I mean, that was a huge decision. But, you know, thankfully, we have been able to, you know, feed our kids. The donations have been coming in nonstop, which is great. But you're 100% right. Sandwich, like a lot of towns, you may not know, but there is a big issue with food pantries and the ability of families to put food on the table. And that's only going to be exacerbated by what's going on right now. I mean, we've seen it, you know, not only here on Cape Cod, but really across Massachusetts as well. So I think that is why it's important also to, again, you know, send somebody up to Beacon Hill that's going to be able to fight for us, but not only fight for us, is going to be able to be heard, because I think that is so important, that you've got to be able to be heard so you can get the resources back for the families that you speak of.
Now, have you talked to Randy at all about what it's like to be up there if you would happen to win?
100%. When I first started thinking about this back in August, Randy actually extended his hand and said, "Jim, when you have some time, you know, come on over. I'd love to talk to you about the job and what it entails." And it was a great conversation. I've even reached out to him a couple times since. You know, the biggest job, I think, of being a state representative, what Randy really hit home to me, is constituent services.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that you could have these big ideas about big issues to, you know, save the planet and do all this and save the world, but ultimately for a state rep, I think it's local issues that are the key. And being able to bring home for those, you know, the citizens of the Barnstable Fifth is, I think, that the most important job you can have. And it's a job which I've kind of done already my whole life. I mean, first out of law school, I graduated Suffolk Law School right in Boston. And I worked as a law clerk for Judge Charlotte Perretta on the appeals court. And after that, I worked for then Congressman, now Senator Markey. And my job for Ed was, yeah, and it was a tremendous job. This was 1994 when I came on. I came on in the campaign of 94. Then I interned in DC, and thankfully he offered me a job in the constituent office up in the district, because it really is constituent services. It's just always been kind of my passion, and being trained for it back then, I was, you know, when you do constituent services for a congressional office, you each have your certain issues of expertise. For myself, it was immigration and the environment, and obviously you hear about immigration today. And you know, back then it was so rewarding to do, because you're helping people, be it, you know, an international adoption, you're helping them with that, or maybe you're helping somebody who hasn't seen a relative come to the United States in a long time. So you really get to know people and cut through the red tape. So it was almost a natural that, you know, after working for Ed, to really go into the union field and do labor work, because labor work is the same thing. You're dealing with constituencies, whereas before it was the folks of the 7th district. Now my constituents are police officers, EMTs, admin workers, across the Commonwealth and across the United States. So Randy hit home to me how important constituent services is to the job, and it's really what I've been doing my entire life. I couldn't feel more prepared for it.
That's great. So so what is the Barnstable Fifth? What towns does it include?
The Barnstable Fifth is 85% of it is here in Sandwich. There are 3 districts in Bourne. I think there's 2 in West Barnstable and 1 in Plymouth. And I think the sense of it is, and really why it's so important that Sandwich is such a huge part of it, because Sandwich is somewhat unique to Cape Cod. I mean, it's often seen as, people say, oh, Sandwich has the highest this on the side of the bridge, highest taxes or what have you. But really, Sandwich is more, I think, comparable to a Plymouth than I think it really is comparable to the other parts of Cape Cod, because we are almost a bedroom community. So, and in the future, I have a sense that the district is going to expand more into Plymouth. So really, it's, like I said, about 85% Sandwich, and the rest of it Bourne, West Barnstable, and Plymouth.
Now, who is your opponent?
Right now on the primary, it's only myself. On the Democratic side, it's myself. On the other side, there's 2 individuals. There's Tom Keys, who's from Sandwich.
Yeah.
And and it's funny, a quick story how I first got to know Tom. I was at the father-daughter dance. This is when my daughter was probably 6 years old or something like that. And she was just circling his daughters, and you could tell she really wanted to dance with them. And he went out of his way to be a very generous person, brought her into the group, and then I got to know Tom. So it's always a nice memory I have from him at the front, of this whole process. And the other gentleman is former Assistant Deputy Chief Steve Xeros.
Oh yeah.
You might know Steve. He's a Gold Star dad. Does tremendous work on behalf of his son Nick. Yeah. And it's funny, I also know him because when I represented the Yarmouth Police. So when we'd be on negotiations, I'd be on one side of the table. Yeah, small world. So I'd be on one side of the table fighting for the patrolmen, and he was on the other side representing the management.
Sure.
So here we are now, all these years later.
Well,
and,
I'm sure. I'm sure between the 2 of you, you always think, well, the best man will win. Of course, you think it will be you.
Well, exactly. Well, and for me, really, it was, I think, the best cause. And when we were on opposite sides of the table, I've always been there for the working families. I've always been there for the patrolmen. And I think that's why no matter who comes out on the Republican side of this race, I just don't think they have the skill set to do this. I mean, this is negotiations. When we go up to Beacon Hill, there's going to be 159 other members who are fighting for the same resources. And, this isn't philanthropy. This is something that you have to know how to negotiate. And as a labor attorney, it's different from any other field of law. When your case is over, the parties go their separate ways. As a labor attorney, when the case is over, you see that person the next day at work. Right. And when we're representing workers, they've got to show up the next day.
Right.
So there's a different skill set to it that ultimately you really have to fight on behalf of your client workers, but also realize that there's a tact to it. And I think that is just going to be an invaluable. I just don't think that we have time to waste learning on the job.
Right.
Somebody who's been negotiating on behalf of workers their entire life, day one, I can hit the ground running. And I think that's the big difference between myself and the folks on the other side of the
Well, that's great. I mean, I'll tell you, you certainly have the background, and you have a nice family. Does your wife work outside the home, or does she work inside the home only?
No, she does. She's a financial host for Martha's Vineyard Bank.
Oh, wow.
And works at she works at the Falmouth branch.
Oh, wonderful.
It was funny. This is her second time working. Yeah, it's her second time working for Martha's Vineyard Savings Bank or Martha's Vineyard Bank. Her first time around, she worked fully on the island.
Ah,
So her job was 4 days a week over on the vineyard. And
yeah,
that, with 2 young kids, that was,
tough.
those were some challenges. But yeah, but now it works out great. So
Oh, that's good.
it's a nice balance to have.
Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. You are quite the guy. Do you have anything else you would like me to know or my audience to know about you, other than the fact that you've got a beautiful painting behind you, you've got a nice wife, two cute kids, and there you go, and you're running on the Democratic ticket, and you really are for the people because that's who you represented. Anything else?
No, I think that is really it, spot on. As I told people at the beginning, I'm not in this. I wasn't in this to challenge Randy. I'm not in this for myself. It's just when I'd heard that Randy had to step down. It's just since last August, it's just been a great ride. I mean,
Yeah.
just knowing, I compare it to Dr. Gould. Dr. Gould's our superintendent of schools for Sandwich. And when we were interviewing her, she said, the job was open a few years ago, but I didn't apply for it because it just wasn't right. I just wasn't ready for it. And this time around, she said she was ready for it. I couldn't agree more. We hired her. She's fantastic. But I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
Had I done this previously, it would have been for the wrong reasons. It would have been for the reason that, my granduncle Paul was the governor back in 1948 and 50. My dad, Ned, was a state rep from Arlington. It had been for those reasons. But now, just knowing how important it is that we have a voice up there, it's for all the right reasons. And I've just had so much support. It's been humbling, but it's also been a great challenge that I'm so excited to take on. It's almost like that, you get that switch is flipped in you,
Yeah.
and it's just all systems go. And I couldn't be more prepared for a job and more excited to really get to know some more people out there in the Barnstable Fifth and see if we can bring their voice to Beacon Hill. I'm a tall guy at 6'7".
I know that.
So I like to tell people, rest assured on Beacon Hill, they will see me, but they will hear you. And that's the truth. It's the voices. For instance, I just got off the phone with the Mass Nurses Association, and I was telling them the same thing, that, your cause or my cause. And that's the whole goal behind this, to finally get the Barnstable Fifth a seat at the table and really bring back to Barnstable Fifth what we deserve.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I don't think the Democrats could have found a finer candidate.
I hope so, and I'm hoping that the Republicans will feel the exact same way, because it's the way we've worked on school committee, and it's the exact same way I plan to work at Beacon Hill.
Well, it's funny because, people will say, common sense isn't very common, but if people have common sense, they understand that you can work on both sides of the aisle. So that's a wonderful thing.
And you have to, and that's what I tell the people. If sending me to Beacon Hill, not only does it make sense, it makes sense, as in CENTS.
Right.
Because you really need to have a voice in the majority, and I'm excited to be that voice for the folks.
Excellent, excellent. Well, nice talking with you today. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy day to do this, and we will survive the pandemic. One last question: do you wear a mask?
Oh, yes, I do. At first I was doing the washcloth with elastic bands, which makes me think, now I can tie a ponytail. I just need to grow the hair. But yeah, now we got the official mask to put on.
Oh, good, yeah. Well, I was talking
I
about.
will know. I can't. I was going to say one quick thing on the masks and how important they are. When I told you I was talking to the nurses, one thing they were saying is even they still don't have the right masks. They need those N95s.
Right.
And they've been told on some times, you just sanitize the mask and you can put it back on. But that's not the situation. I mean, these nurses over there are struggling. I mean, we can, support them and say they're heroes, but ultimately at the end of the day, we need to give them what they need. And that can only be done by going up to Beacon Hill and doing that for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They are the heroes, but it's just like a soldier. You wouldn't send them into battle without a gun. So it's the same thing. You got to have the
100%.
for sure.
Correct.
So, Jim, thank you again. It was great talking with you, great to getting to know you, and I'll see you around Sandwich.
I'm looking forward to seeing you and everybody else. So everybody stay safe and we'll see you soon enough.
Excellent. Thank you. James Dever, running on the Democratic ticket for the Barnstable 5th, seems to know a lot about people. I mean, after all, he is a labor attorney, and he has a nice family, lives right here in Sandwich, was on the Sandwich School Board for many years. So I was glad we had a great conversation with him, and I hope you listen to decide who you want to vote for. So again, thank you for joining me, and remember, wear your mask. It's very, very trendy. Bye-bye.